Big game. Two teams, 2-1, and you look at just the opportunity to be 3-1 for both teams. We haven't been there since 2000.
First time for us since 2007. For them, it would be 1999.
Yeah. So these have been some football-starved, successful fan bases, and going to be a big game. I think the bye week was good for us. We got a few guys a little bit more healed up who might not have been able to play last weekend. And, we're going to have to play well. I expect New Mexico State's best shot. And, I think they certainly got flattered. Their win over Tulsa, looked a lot better after Tulsa beat Oklahoma State. So I know this team has our attention. And we had a good first practice yesterday. We got to continue well on the practice field today to be ready to go. I think Coach Sanchez does a nice job. A guy I've known for a long time, and he's got a lot of pride in this matchup, being an alum as well from New Mexico State. So, any questions?
Ton of new guys for you on the roster, and of course you guys on staff are all new to it as well. I mean, how do you educate guys in the rivalry, without having a ton of experience in it?
Well, we had a few of the veterans have talked to the team a little bit about the game, what to expect. We're going to have some former players, stop by to talk a little bit about it. So it's an education process. We need a trophy for this game too. I think we're missing an opportunity. Tell our business guys, Lucinda's got a logo on our field and their field. We think they would sponsor a trophy for the game and get a little extra money for rev share for both of us. But truly a missed opportunity. We don't have a trophy for this game. It's a shame. Traveling trophy is one of the best things. So I'll be very disappointed if we don't have one for next year. Let's get that fixed.
Sanchez kind of talked about that yesterday too, in an era where player movement is so frequent and so common that it does really help to have a guy that's been there for a few years and kind of knows the rivalry. Who are the guys on the roster right now that have kind of stepped up and taken that mantle?
Tavian Combs and Isaiah Silliman. They're in their 6th and 5th year, and just talked about this game. Hey, it's going to be a little bit more chippy than another game. We got to really keep our poise and be a disciplined team because emotions will be high when you have a rivalry game.
And Coach Eck, how do you treat this week? Of course, you had rivalries in the past, Idaho State. How do you treat this week compared to other weeks of preparation?
Well, I think you emphasize the importance of the game, and I think those factors can lead teams to plan. They always say throw off the records when you have teams. Teams are usually going to play in a rivalry game better than maybe you saw in film, better than they expect a better effort than they had against Bryant for, say, their first game. So I think that's something you got to expect. It's the intensity of the game, the atmosphere of the game. There's a little bit more hype. The crowd's going to be bigger. We have to do a good job of keeping our poise even on offense, because I'm sure, when you add those fans, whatever. If we have 30,000 fans and we had 17 the last game, those other 13,000 are probably rooting for New Mexico State, or they're not going to be the most skilled fans. They're probably going to be loud when we have the ball. So we got to be poised, and we can't be jumping off sides and things because there's going to be more noise in the stadium. But despite those factors that make add to the intensity and of that, the same factors that win any game, we're going to win this game. Who executes better, who makes more plays, who plays cleaner football. So we got to do those. The recipe doesn't change how we win.
And how is the status of Scott Trey Humphrey for this game? Is there anything that you can share?
He's looking good. He practiced some yesterday. Expect him to practice and do everything today. So I think he's probable.
And then the last question is just, with such a talented running back room, they're in the top 10. 3 of the guys are top 10 rated guys on PFF. How do you treat a running back room like this? Is it just passed off to the hot hand? Is it just, we're going to stick to what we had planned?
Well, running backs do get nicked. You've seen that already with Scott Troy having the injury. And you got to have some depth there, but we also try to have some packages where we get a few of those guys on the field. And I do like to ride the hot hand. We also try to play to those guys' strengths, get those guys in positions to do what they do best, because they all have a little different skill set. They do a great job. They're an unselfish bunch of guys who they haven't been complaining about touches. We're getting all of those guys touches.
Thank you, Coach.
Going back to the rivalry, Coach, with players now having multiple schools, is there more education about the importance of a rivalry than there was in the past?
Yeah, I think so. I think there definitely is. I think there's not as many guys who've grown up in it. And, I think if you look at both of our rosters, I think we probably are both in the 10 to 15 New Mexico guys. So it's not like half of our roster is New Mexico guys. So it is a new rivalry that we have to educate guys on, so they're not surprised by the intensity and speed of the game. But certainly it's a lot different than it was before the transfer portal and NIL, where you had 70 players back every year who knew about it from last year.
And the second part is coming off a big one like you did a couple weeks ago, and then having a week to soak it in, players kind of reading their social media and how great they are. Do you have to do any more education about calming them back down and getting them back to business, and how do you approach that?
Yeah, we talked a little bit on our meeting yesterday, and I think having the extra week helped with that. But we talked about just went over some scores that are perplexing, because in college football you'll see some scores of one team lost to this team by this much, but then beat this other team by this much, and how is that possible? And it's because teams weren't ready. There was a flaw in their preparation. They were little things that they can control. They didn't do a good job of, because obviously it wasn't a talent issue. If they're good enough to beat this team by this much, there obviously was something else going on. It wasn't a talent issue in this other game, and I made that point to our team. It's not. It's not going to be. If we lose any games on our schedule, it's not going to be because we're not talented enough. It's going to be because our championship behavior is not good enough. It's going to be the Lobos beating the Lobos, whether it's the way we practice, the way we are just building championship habits, and everything we do, the way we play. So that was a big message that it's about us, and there's no college football games are not computer simulations. Who would win the most if you played this matchup 1,000 times? It's one Saturday for 3 hours. Play better for those 60 minutes.
Coach, you talk about intensity in games like this and maybe getting a little chippy. Your team's been really disciplined in regards to penalties and how good you've been. Is there emphasis on where the line is as far as talking, as far as chirping, as far as intensity in a game like this, and staying disciplined but yet not backing down?
Yeah, I think you've got to keep your composure. Again, the line's pretty easy. If you do something that gets you a 15-yard penalty, that's too much, And we also try to correct times where we think, hey, that could have been a 15-yard penalty. Maybe they gave you a break on it, but that could be with a different referee crew or a different circumstance. So we try to do a good job of coaching that. But that's going to be critical in this game, to keep our poise and keep our composure, and just keep our focus on the task at hand and always focus on the next play. Again, I want our guys to play with emotion. A coach I used to work with used to say this. It's a great quote. Play with emotion, but you can't let emotion play with you. You can't get so wound up, that now the next play you have a bust because you were talking so much after the last play. Yeah, you gotta say a little something. That's fine. Now get back to the huddle, do your job the next play.
How much focus is on discipline? Because you've been so good in regards to penalties, considering the history of the last couple of years of this program. How much focus on discipline in regards to where the penalties are?
We don't talk about discipline a ton. We talk about a lot about accountability. Doing what you're supposed to do and when you're supposed to do it. Just having championship behavior in all things. And I think probably discipline is certainly an element of that. But we focus on. We talk a lot about the Lobos not beating the Lobos. That's not something we want to be a team that's tough to beat. And I felt that was one of the key ways of turning around a program that's been struggling. Is just to start. Just don't screw it up. Even if you don't make any plays yourself, if you don't screw it up, I think you can get to 500 just by doing that. So that's something we talked about.
Coach, you feel like the strength of this team is the balance between offense and defense, number one, and then number two, Darren Nagu. It's only his second game. Do you expect to put a lot more pressure between him and Newby against the Aggies this Saturday?
I think we're still. I think the season's still young. I think we're still defining the strengths of our team. I do think to have a really good football team, you got to be strong in all three phases. You can't rely on one phase to carry you and be weak in two other phases. So I do think we have the opportunity to be really good in all three phases. We got to keep growing and getting better. And all areas, all three phases have some improvement areas to have. And then Agu played well last week. Agu played. I want to say 30 snaps and did a nice job coming off the bench. Probably will still come off the bench this week, but I think he'll certainly continue to have a big role, and I thought he did a heck of a job in this last game. He ended up missing some practice last week. It was a little thing. He had like little stitches he had to get in his knee, and it was like right on where it bends. So it wasn't like serious, but it was just, they had to let it heal a little bit. He practiced yesterday, but I think he's still working a little bit on his conditioning and things. I don't know if he'll be able to go much more beyond 30-some plays. I was surprised he was able to get 30 in this first game. I wouldn't expect him to play much more than that, but I think he can have a valuable role in those plays.
I don't think I'm pretty sure you didn't see him last year. Obviously, they got Logan Fife kind of coming over from Montana, and upgraded the quarterback position for them. What have you seen out of him, and what does he kind of present for you guys?
I think he's a good player. We did not play him last year at Montana, but we saw him on crossover film, and he's accurate. He does a good job with RPOs. He's a good enough athlete to get you a few first downs running the ball. I think he's got some moxie and some toughness. You kind of see him as a guy that I bet the O-line there likes to play for him and things. So definitely a guy who's got to respect.
A lot of screens in this offense too. I mean, and they do pass a lot more than they run it. I mean, what are the kind of things that you emphasize playing
Yeah,
an
do a
offense
good
like
job
this?
against their screen game. You know, Gavin Harris, their tight end, they do a good job of screening to him. You know, I think they got two really good receivers, in PJ Johnson and Donovan Flappel. And you know, we'll see. It's still early in the year. Like I said, I'm sure they don't like where they're at running the ball yards per carry and things. So I'm sure that's been a point of emphasis that they want to be more physical and run the ball better. I hope they get that fixed next week, not this week, and continue to limit them in the run game and try to make them, you know, more one-dimensional. But you know, I'm impressed. They haven't given up a lot of sacks for how much they're throwing it and things. I think they're doing a good job. And Hugh, I think he protects himself because he gets the ball out quick. He does a good job of getting out of his hands.
Jason, you're talking about a traveling trophy. There is a new traveling trophy that was made this year by the student section, the Hellraisers, and the NMSU student section.
Good.
It's called the Roaster. It'll be announced later today. It is a chili roaster.
Good.
And I'm curious what your reaction to that is, that the two student sections
Good.
have put it together. Carlos put it together.
We got to find out where it is, and then I want to hopefully win this game and go pick it up and carry it all around the stadium.
Well, good
Celebrate.
luck. You'll need some of your offensive
It's
line
heavy.
probably, because it is a full-size chili roaster.
Yeah.
What do you think though about these two student sections kind of coming together in a rivalry? I know you haven't been here for the past rivalries, but a rivalry that's gotten pretty nasty, like good rivalries sometimes do, but it's sometimes crossed the line. This rivalry is a pretty heated one, even though it gets overlooked.
I hope it doesn't cross the line. You know, again, I hope it's really competitive. You know, I've found a lot of people who, you know, I've met some people who are Aggies who say, hey, I root for the Aggies when they play the Lobos, but the other days of the year I root for them, which, you know, I kind of felt that. I mean, I'll root for these guys when they're not playing us. You know, we're not in the same conference or anything. So I hope it doesn't cross the line, but it's good to have some passion and have some debate. And, you know, probably they asked me this on the TV show, you know, the best rivalry, in-state rivalry I've been involved in is I coached 1 year at Montana State. And that is a really big rivalry in Montana State that carries over kind of year round. And I remember I had a booster the first year tell me, he goes, I'd rather have you go 1-10 and beat Montana than go 10-1 and lose to Montana. And I kind of laughed at the time thinking that wasn't true, but then after being through it, you go, yeah, I think he was probably true. So I don't think it'll come to that point, but I think it's great it's a rivalry. I think it's great that students are getting involved with that. I know our student tickets are close to being sold out, and I'll stick to my pledge. I want to see 30,000. You know, I'll be disappointed if we don't have 30,000 people in the stadium. So
The other part is you've talked since you got hired about games like this and about getting that stadium full. You're in game week now. It's kind of out of your hands at this point. You've done your pleading to the fans to come to this game. Is this a little
I might
bit
do one more selfie.
You might do one more. Is this a little bit of a litmus test to kind of see where you guys are? I know it's really early in the season, but like, is this a test? You guys kind of have done your part, and now the fans kind of have to do theirs.
Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, I think it's a big test for us as a football team. You know, because you know, there's a big difference between being 3-1 and 2-2, and there's a big difference in keeping momentum going after that. So I think it's a big test for us. I'd say it's a big test for our fan base too. Just you know, how do the people of Albuquerque view this team? And again, I think fan bases have never been more important. They've always been important, but I think their importance now is, you know, you look at a team like Texas Tech that has gone, you know, they were always kind of a middle to bottom team in their conference that now is surging to the top, and that's really their fans and their boosters who have made that happen. So I do think it's we both have to step up this weekend. We got to step up, play our best football. I think our fan base needs to step up and be their best this weekend.
Offensive game plan standpoint, their defense gives up almost 190 rushing yards a game. You guys are almost averaging 190 rushing yards, top four of running backs, especially in the trio this game against the Bears.
Yeah, I think really every week we talk about we want to win the rushing battle. I mean, that's an important thing. And you look at, you know, it's pretty simple. Our three games, you know, the two games where we won the rushing battle, we won. The one game that we lost, we lost. And I think this game is probably even more important because they have not been a good rushing team this year. So I would hope that we can dominate those two categories and be the more physical team. You know, but I think we got to have balance on offense too. You know, they played a lot of too high defense. You know, with their box not as heavy, But again, if we don't get a few more plays out of our passing game, somebody's going to say screw it and just stack the box and play everybody down tight. So we got to be ready for those moments and ready to win one-on-one and have some good concepts. If we get a team who wants to change it up and play us all man, which happens sometimes. Sometimes teams try to change up their tendencies of what they've done. So we got to be ready for everything. But I'd like to see our run game with our O-line, tight ends, running backs continue to improve throughout the year.
Are you expecting to get Keegan back this week?
Yes, he's back. He practiced well yesterday.
And then Marcus Vincent also as well. Is he going to be back
He's out.
anytime soon?
He's out not for a while.
Okay. In regards to Sanchez mentioned yesterday he's known you for a long time, and you kind of said that too. What can you kind of share about your previous interactions with Tony?
Yeah, I met Tony for the first time. I thought he was an impressive guy. He was head coach at California High School. This was probably like 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. And I was an assistant coach at Idaho. We were recruiting one of his old linemen. We didn't get him to Idaho. I think he had to go to Nevada. I thought Tony was great. It was one of those things I visited with the kid after school. And then after the player left, I hung out with him for an hour and talked football. I think he was like teaching in the classroom. It was like a social studies classroom or something. I don't know what subject he was teaching. We were drawing up plays on the grease board and things. And always thought he was impressive. And then kind of lost track of him. We didn't stay in touch much as he ended up going to Vegas to Gorman, and then when he was the head coach at UNLV, he wasn't in touch with him much. But then reconnected when I got hired at the Idaho job. I ran into him at an event and visited, and we had a good conversation right when I got hired. Kind of one of those like, hey, who would have thought 20 years ago when we were drawing up plays on the grease board that here we'd be coaching in this game. But a lot of respect for him. I think he does a good job. He's a good recruiter. I think he understands the junior colleges really well. Having played at junior college, does a good job. Finding some talent out of there. I think I want to say 35 is a junior college guy who's from Albuquerque, Tyler Martinez, who I think is a tough player, and he's the kind of guy who I'd expect him to play like the game of his life against us, because I know he'll be highly motivated coming back here from Albuquerque and doing a great job. So he's done a good job there. I think obviously being with Coach Kill was a great opportunity for him, because Coach Kill is such a great coach, and I know he'll have his boys ready.
We talked about the offense earlier too. I mean, you're looking at them defensively. Where do they kind of provide challenges for you guys?
You know what? They're pretty good on defense now. I mean, I think number 6 is a great player. They don't even list him on the depth chart as a starter, but I think he really stands out. He's had some nice sacks, some nice TFLs. I think 35 and 14, Martinez and Sone are good linebackers. Their safeties do a good job. Nick Session and Mitchell, I mean, they'll play downhill when they're playing some of their quarter stuff. I think they got a good good defense. They've defended well, and even last week that La Tech score is a little deceiving because some of those points were scored by La Tech's defense on the field. So I think they've done a good job, and I'd say up to this point, their defense has been the strength. As you look at them statistically and things.
Jeff's got a question, but you may mention something about the students. Just so you know, officially they have sold out the student section. That has not happened in my 16 years here, so that's
awesome. So the student tickets sold out. That's good. And again, that was something we wanted to do here. That's something we made a point of, was reaching out to the students and getting them engaged, having events on campus. We have students out to my radio show every night. I think there's like 90 of them there tonight, so it's been pretty crowded up there. So that's been great. It's great to see. And now we should come up with a deal for the students who missed it out, to maybe they can buy one for cheap or something, to try to get some more of those students in there, because there's probably some people talk to Fern about this.
we'll see if Fern puts this game on.
Yeah.
You already talked about your familiarity with Tony down there. If I'm not mistaken, and maybe I am, but you were on the Idaho coaching staff the year down in Las Cruces to win this New Mexico State team. Were you down on the field or up in the box with that dog pile?
I was on the field.
Did you participate in the dog pile?
I don't think I got to the dog pile, but it was an amazing game between two really bad football teams. So I hope there's a lot better football on the field than that Saturday. That was like two really bad teams trying to lose the game multiple times. I remember that game because it was double overtime. At the first overtime, I want to say we threw an interception and they ran it back to the 1 yard line. But like in overtime, that doesn't benefit you to run it back to the 1 yard line, because it still goes back to the 25. So we were a yard of winning. Then they threw a pass the first play at the bottom. They only needed a field goal, and they threw a pass, and they got down to the 1 yard line. So they were going to have first and goal at the 1, and the guy fumbled out the back of the end zone. So in the top and bottom of the first overtime, we lost. We barely survived a yard each time. Then in the second overtime, they scored first. Then we had the ball. We threw incomplete on the 2-point convert. Went for 2. Threw incomplete, and then one of their guys lined up in the neutral zone. Had nothing to do with the play, but just bad football. The guy lined up, that had no effect. So we got to go again. Then we caught the second conversion. So that's my only time I've been down to Las Cruces before was for that game. I think it was 2005.
Any surprise to you that Nick Holt was part of that dog pile?
No, not at all. Nick, I learned a lot from Nick. Nick was the first coach I worked for where I was a position coach, and I learned a lot from him. And he was a great mentor, and I learned a lot about defense from him. So that's the only time in my career I played in New Mexico State. So if it takes double overtime, if we get a win, I'll still be happy. These rivalry games, I don't think these are games you don't worry about. There's no style points in rivalry games. It's about getting the win.
So, Coach, I understand it's, you want to win a conference title, bowl game, those are the big things, but this is always a matchup that you circle. Again, I know you talked about the rivalry, but how big is this matchup to come out, hopefully, the best team in New Mexico, you know what I'm saying?
I think it's big to win the state championship in New Mexico. I think it's probably big for our casual fans. The diehards are going to be the diehards, but for a casual fan who's trying to make a decision, winning this game, maybe having some bragging rights and for the Lobos and being able to stick it to their buddies who are Aggie fans and stuff, I think it's huge. So this is a huge game. And again, we need to get the best players in the state. There'll always be a kid or two who's a Power 4 recruit who us or New Mexico State is not going to be able to afford to sign, but there's not many of those guys. And anybody who falls below that, if they're not a Power 4 conference guy, we got to try to sign here. So winning this game, I think, is important in the state for recruiting throughout the whole state.
You just qualified for the section game, so that's the first time in years. Do you feel like things are turning in the right direction?
I think it's turned. I think things are going in the right direction now. We got to keep the momentum going. But I think there's no question we have things in the right direction. Again, I think not a lot of people are predicting us to be 2-1 right now, and this team to be big. And I think we clearly have things going in the right direction. And maybe I didn't know how long. I knew we'd eventually get going in the right direction. I didn't know how fast it would be, but we can't feel good about ourselves. We got a lot of work to do. This will be our first time playing this rivalry game, and we got to play really well. What we don't get any points on this board to start the game because we beat UCLA a couple weeks ago. It's still 0-0. We got to earn everything this Saturday, and we got to play really well against a team that'll be highly motivated. And I told the team that this game means a lot to them too. It's not like I thought we played harder than UNL or than UCLA, and I thought we would play harder than UCLA. I don't know if we're gonna be able to play harder this team. I think it's gonna be two teams playing their ass off, playing just as hard, and we got to really execute and play at a high level.
We've seen coaches here in the past really talk up the importance of the rivalry and say it means everything. We've seen coaches kind of say, well, it's just another game, and that's what makes it important. Where do you kind of fall on that scale?
No, I think it's a bigger game than average. I think this game means more to the people in the state clearly than our fan base than Idaho State or something. And the Michigan game is different, where probably a lot of people felt good even though we lost. This is a game you got to win, and it's important to win, and it's critical. So I think these rivalry games are huge, and again, we get I think there's diehard Lobos, there's diehard Aggies. It's like an election. You got to win the independents in the middle. We got to win those independents and get those people to be Lobos to support us to fill the stadium, because there's not, if there was 37,000 diehards, we'd be selling out every game. Okay, there's not. We got to get some more of those casual fans and get people on the bandwagon who maybe are more independent. And everyone loves a winner, so we got to win these games.
News dropped last week. The spring transfer window is being eliminated, or on track to be eliminated. I know a lot of coaches were in favor of that. A couple weren't. What are your kind of thoughts on that?
I like it for a couple reasons. One, I think just having one transfer portal window helps you set your team earlier. And we lost a kid we thought was going to be a starter in the late portal window. I also think the timing of it, and I think that's still up for debate a little bit when the timing of it is. For us, when we start school, like this January, our classes start January 20th, so I think we have plenty of time if it's the 2nd through the 11th to get turned around and get guys in school. I'd probably feel different if we were like a school that started January 6th or something like some schools do, so I think that can still be an issue, but I do think my opinion was getting to one portal window rather than two was worth it, no matter when that one window was, even if they had to be later in the spring and it changed spring practice.
There's an or between Dimitri Johnson and David Murphy at what I presume is the will linebacker spot. What does that kind of indicate at this point?
They're just kind of rotating. I mean, we're playing Murph a little bit more in passing downs and playing Dimitri a little bit more in rundowns. You know, that's kind of what it is. We go to our posse. Usually Murph is subbing in.
You mentioned that you like college football. You're going to watch college football this weekend. Did anything kind of stand out from the ball that you watched this weekend?
It's a good question. Probably, I wouldn't say there was like an overriding, theme that I noticed. I did think that, you saw some perplexing, scores like San Diego State, drilling Cal after Cal was 3-0, which, tells me two things. Tells me that like San Diego State just was not at their best when they played Washington State and got drilled, because then Washington State's got drilled the next 2 weeks, and Cal wasn't at their best, last week after being there. So just a good reminder, you got to be at or near your best every time you come out, and that's critical. And you got to build that consistently. You got to be consistent just in your life, and you got to be consistent on an everyday basis. Because if your good days are really good and your bad days are really bad, you're gonna have some big wins, but you're gonna have some terrible losses as well. And to be a championship team, your bad days can't be that bad. So that might be the one overriding thing. I talked about it a little bit with the team yesterday.
Coach, Dorian Thomas healthy, and do you expect him to have a big role in this game?
Yeah, I expect, there's no secrets. I expect him to have a big role in every game. He's the guy we want to get the ball to a lot, and we got to be creative, and I think teams are going to try to stop him, so we got to kind of stay one step ahead of people and have new ways to get them involved. And if people are doing something to take away, like last week I thought they did a good job. In the first series, we tried to run a screen to him, and they were doing man coverage and really hugging up, and they were in the front. They made it tough for the linemen to get out because they had guys covered. But we were able to find some other ways to do that. But he's healthy, practiced well, and he's a guy we want to get the ball to every week and get heavily involved in the offense.
Let's finish it with Rick, who might have been here in 64 the last time.
I was.
There you go.
At the NMSU press conference yesterday, they referenced an Albuquerque area kid who signed with New Mexico State after not getting a look from UNM. I know in-state recruiting is going to be important to you. If you see a state kid, in particular this Albuquerque area kid who's maybe marginal, how much of a benefit of the doubt would that kid get?
I think you need to handicap it a little bit. I certainly, I think I learned that when I was coaching. That 1 year I coached at Montana State. I'm referencing them a lot today. But we were really recruiting like 3 states when I was at Montana State: California, Texas, and Montana. And a lot of recruiting. You're watching tape from their junior year, like in the February of their junior year, and you watched. I was watching O linemen from those 3 states. The guys from California and Texas always look better because they probably were in schools where they maybe just played football, or a lot of the Montana kids were multi-sport athletes. It was probably the level of the coaching development. There was more, California and Texas, there's a lot of year-round stuff that goes on. But then when you looked at who were the all-conference players at Montana State over the last 10 years, half of them were guys from Montana. So that made me really think, hey, when you're from a smaller population state that doesn't have as nationally renowned football, you got to handicap it. And I think part of it too is the pride in representing your home state. I think David Murphy is a great example of that. I don't think you put David Murphy is especially just looking at his total package of size. He's pretty fast, but size, speed. He's not the biggest guy. He's a very undersized linebacker, but I do think his passion and pride of representing the state is part of what makes him a good player. The guy who's in there at crunch time and has had 2 huge plays 2 weeks in a row for us. So we have to do that. And again, I do. It's not. I couldn't have done anything about it because Tyler Martinez was recruited to New Mexico State before I was hired. But yeah, I don't like it when I see a really good player from Volcano Vista that's starting for them, and I think it's a really good player that I think he'd look pretty good in argument for him. So good recruiting by them to get him, but I don't want to see those guys in the future. I don't want to miss those guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.